everybody, welcome back to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 619, being recorded on March 10, 2021. I'm Sebastian Peak.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh
What a catastrophe.
I approve that cat butt message. I'm going to be Brett Van Spernberg tonight.
I used to wish I was Josh Walrath, but no more. I'm Kent Burgess.
Yeah, nobody. I mean, Josh is special, but, you know, it's our differences that make life worth living and stuff like that. You can subscribe to find out when we go live for things like this at PCPer.com.
Why would people do that?
I don't know. /subscribe. PCPer.com/subscribe. You can be alerted before live events take place. I saw the email at about 9:15 tonight. So exactly 1 hour before we actually started the show, because it's now 10:15 on the East Coast. You can support this site, and I honestly, at this point, we're not making a great case for it, but you could do it anyway and be recognized for it. We appreciate all of our patrons. Patreon.com/PCPer. Brett, do we have anybody to add to the honor roll?
You know, we do, and this was formerly Numbers Dude, because his name used to be 199, 299, 399, 499. You probably guess what comes next. He's since changed his name to Mr. Shiloh, and he wants to wish a happy belated birthday to Rebecca from her favorite PC person. I'm not sure what that part means, but it sounds like
it means something to them. Happy birthday, Rebecca.
That's important.
Belated. Happy belated birthday.
How do you know
Rebecca.
that you're her favorite?
You know, he apparently knows.
Maybe she said so.
I'm her favorite. I should have announced that.
Her favorite PC person. What does that mean?
He did.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Josh. Actually, he did want you to announce that, so we can do a personalized message.
What's her
later.
name again?
Hold on, let me go
Rebecca.
to camera 2.
Rebecca. Happy birthday. I hope you get all the PC parts you've ever desired.
Getting a serious Marilyn Monroe vibe there, Josh. So
Yeah, no.
great job. Speaking of Josh,
That's like the
I
handsome
wasn't
Squidward, more like.
I wasn't sure the show was just going to stay R-rated. I'm glad you got
that
away.
sultry delivery
It was.
with happy birthday.
I was afraid.
This is the time of our show every week where if we have been blessed by a burger update on Twitter, Josh explains his weekly sojourn to the local burger place. Laramie, Wyoming.
born in
Josh,
the barn,
go.
Laramie, Wyoming. Go visit it. Tell him Josh Walrath sent you. If that ever happens. So anyway, this was kind of a special week. I didn't have a great weekend. I mean, it was a nice weekend, but Sunday rolled around. We went out to the backyard and we cleaned up a whole winter full of dog do, and that was a lot of fun. And by the end of it, we were all pretty exhausted, and so we decided to you know what. Let's go have a burger. So I had a Sunday night taco burger. And even though we talked about other things earlier, that's not what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. The taco burger. In between two buns, we have first a topping of lime spiced sour cream. The next layer is freshly sliced avocados, pepper jack cheese, the first 4-ounce beef patty. Under that, a layer of fresh cut jalapenos sitting on top of another slice of pepper jack cheese, a second burger patty, and then the bun. And that, my friends, is the taco burger. It was extraordinary. It was quite good. I forgot.
Right burger?
I forgot.
Here?
Yeah, that was it.
Huh.
At the very bottom, under the second patty and in between the bun, is taco meat spices. So, you know, the spices that you usually put in the meat that you stir up and fry to make tacos, well, they have a layer of that at the bottom. And it's delightful. It's exquisite. You should try it. but you have like 1 day left to do so.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The picture just shows lettuce. There's no fries.
What are you talking about? There's no lettuce.
Are you hallucinating?
I think we're looking at the wrong photo. This is the
No,
photo
you're
I
not.
had.
I
Yeah,
can spot
those-
the avocado immediately because
Yeah.
I hate avocado, and I knew
What I'm
that they
saying
would hate
is
it.
now
there are no
there's-
fries. I just see a piece of lettuce where the fries should be.
I had a salad because
Oh,
we cleaned
okay.
up poo, and
Yeah.
Okay.
no, I had a salad. So
You
I
had
hope
the
there was
dog
more
food
than just
thaw.
that one piece of lettuce.
yeah, there was more than that one piece of lettuce, and also we had pub chips, which are freshly, potato chips made on site that they fry there daily. So they're seasoned, wonderful, perfect, fresh potato chips made in house. Very good.
Nice.
Yeah. I was very full by the time I left.
Let's move right into the news, where we have a few topics tonight. Let's start with one that's maybe not the most talked about tech story of the last week. We'll get to that soon. But first on the list, a most delicious rumor for Microsoft Surfaces or AMD. Jeremy.
Last year, we finally saw in the 15-inch models the choice that you could pick Intel or AMD. This was a big change from Microsoft because when you talk about being a vertical silo, they've got a patent on it, and so even the original Ryzen 7 3780 that they put in, or there was a Ryzen 5 option as well. It was a specific Microsoft Surface Edition processor. We never knew exactly what that meant, at least as far I never did find out what it was, other than it spec'd to what it needed to be for a Surface. There is a rumor, and as far as rumors go, this one is way out there because it's based on a specification sheet that a reseller saw from another dealer. So it's kind of my second cousin's brother's cousin's roommate's sister-in-law type thing saw this. But if true, we're going to see the 13.5-inch model of the Surface added to this. So you'll be able to pick up a Ryzen 5 4680U or a Ryzen 7 4890U or 4980U. Again, a specific Surface Edition. Probably is likely to be soldered, but hey, you never know. And so it gives you a little bit more choice when you're dealing with the new Surface 4. There is one small benefit if you decide to go with Tiger Lake, though, which is what the Surface Laptop 4 is going to have on the Intel side. The AMD models cap out at 16 gigs of RAM, the Intel at 32, and the AMD has up to a 512 gigabyte SSD where you can get a full terabyte with the Intel one. I suspect this is because the processors are spec'd in such a way by Intel that there's enough power overhead, thermal overhead, or just, overhead to convince Microsoft to stick with that. But hey, it's lovely to see choices, and considering what we're going to be talking about a little bit later on, you might be really happy to be able to choose that Ryzen version.
Mm-hmm.
Any more comment on this?
I applaud additional Ryzen options. It's a
Yes.
good buy.
It's good to have choice.
I have no additional comment at this time.
All right. The
Gentleman from Wyoming.
Yes, the chair recognizes the gentleman for it. Quickly,
I was just going to say, your witness.
Quickly, Microsoft is, I guess, we'd heard about this last year, I thought, and it's official, I guess. They've completed their acquisition of
Bethesda. What up with that?
It got EU approval. Isn't that exciting?
Hooray.
Yeah, so it wasn't official until the EU closed on it. I think
Yes.
the most interesting thing about this is the exclusives. I mean, you got to expect it when you shell out $7.5 billion.
Because let me tell you how many exclusives Xbox has right now with their Xbox Series S.
Well, you said Series
Well,
S.
You could say
X.
Series S.
X doesn't have any
X.
exclusives?
No, I said
really?
X.
Huh.
I said
I thought you
X.
said S.
I've not been
Maybe I
like an S.
slurred it, but anywhere it's X. Series
Sounded like-
X.
It sounded like cat anus from here. I wasn't sure.
Series X.
Yeah.
That's a totally different
Makes it-
SKU.
It is. So, what are you going to do when you're going up against Sony and your guns are empty? You need some
You're
ammo.
going to buy ZeniMax and you're going to release
Sure.
Elder Scrolls 6 on Xbox One initially. That could be bad.
Yeah,
But now we live in a
Game
world
Pass.
where if Bethesda's dialogue wasn't already bad enough, now it's going to be written by the AI that handles Cortana.
We
I see your
buried the
point
lead.
there.
We buried the lead this
Futurist.
week,
We did.
and I don't know why. But anyway, the number one story clearly is AnandTech in the news because of a review they published. And normally that wouldn't be a big deal. They always have the latest Intel processor review. But think back to a time before Intel sampled CPUs to internet media outlets. I know that young Anand actually had to buy his Pentium 2, or his dad, I think he said his dad actually bought it for his review, but that was a long time ago. Apparently, fast forward to
I remember
2021.
when Tom's Hardware got their first Pentium 2, and it was like a 6-month previous leak. So he released a very, very early Pentium 2.
Mm.
And then Sharky's did that with the Athlon.
Yeah, they
The
did.
original Athlon.
Oh, they got an ES
And,
Athlon? Interesting.
Yeah, and it was bad performing. It was worse than a K63. But then come to find out that had the cache disabled on it, something, but it wasn't running in final form. And obviously, the Athlon 550 turned out to be the fastest CPU on the planet by a long shot. But going ahead.
Yes, going ahead to this Core i7-11700K review, which Dr. Ian Cuttress published for AnandTech on March 5. It was 5
Seems
days
early.
ago. It's a bit early considering
A tad.
this product isn't released yet, and embargo's not up on reviews. But there was a
Not
German
until what,
retailer.
the 30th?
Yeah, I don't know actually. He talks about it in here.
Yeah, it's the 30th.
Yeah,
I thought it was. Yeah.
30th, March 30th. So they took advantage of the fact that a certain German retailer was selling these early.
Oops.
And so a number of people have purchased these. We saw some reviews, like sort of not reviews, but previews, performance previews from people just on the internet testing these early.
Amateurs.
Right, but then Ian got his hand on it. They just have the 11700K, I believe, because that's the only one that was being sold. They paid the equivalent of US $469 for it. So they're not comparing it to anything else in the family, but they don't need to. Here's what's interesting about this too. If you're not familiar, the new Rocket Lake stuff tops out at 8 cores because it's based on previous mobile architecture. They backported 10 nanometer mobile to 14 nanometer desktop to get the clocks that they wanted and make it a desktop part. Well, obviously we've seen
And
a
the
progression.
IPC improvement, right?
Well, yeah, that's why they did it, because
Yeah.
they are getting a significant
Need a next
single core
generation part.
uplift.
Yeah.
Nothing? Okay. I thought somebody started talking.
Come on, the flow. Jeremy,
Okay.
I thought you were going to say something. You interrupted the flow.
Well, you said they needed next generation part, and I agreed by saying still.
Oh, still. Oh, see, it's too subtle. Too subtle for the podcast.
Hey, I mean, now that I've drawn it out, I'll get
Skylake
hate
joke.
mail.
I'm just excited about the integrated graphics. Think about, this is going to be my take. Preview, spoiler, for whenever we review this. And now it's old hat, because obviously AnandTech had the scoop by weeks, and so any review anybody else has is just like, oh yeah, well, here's this processor that you've all seen all the charts for almost a month now. But I'm excited about the integrated graphics, moving to the XE architecture. Because you can't buy a GPU, why not get better integrated graphics on the CPU you can actually buy?
Why not?
You have a point there.
Basically, he frames this by saying that Intel's making the best of a bad situation. This whole backporting thing, you can't deny. Like it's however they want to spin it. As positive as you can make it sound and talk about the IPC uplift, you're still releasing a part that has fewer cores at the flagship level. So this 11700K, if I'm getting that name right,
Yeah.
has the same core count as the Core i9 will this generation. So it at some point it's just not going to make sense. Like 8 cores, 16 threads for this price, or 8 cores, 16 threads for this higher price, where the difference is probably mitigated by some very basic overclocking, like a couple hundred megahertz on the. I don't know what the base clock of the 11900K is offhand. It might be 4 gigahertz.
I think the difference is only 100 megahertz. That's what
is
I'm
it really
kind of
that
remembering right
that
now.
minimal?
It's
I
not
think it was
big.
yeah, that was 5.2 to 5.3 at the top end. That's what I'm remembering.
Okay, looking at this table, as I seamlessly cut away from my foolishness there. Oh,
You
it
know,
doesn't
the
have
best
it.
part about that,
doesn't have base
the
frequency.
best part about that entire table,
Yes.
and let me tell you what it is. That 125 watt TDP.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
You had to go right for the
Spoken like a
jugular
true
vein.
AMD fan.
Carry on.
You know, power limits actually have to be enforced on Intel's platform, on the motherboard.
That's what I was talking
AMD,
about.
what is the limit? It's like 140 watts, right? And it just doesn't really ever exceed that on Ryzen. Like 139, 140 watts. Am I incorrect there, Josh?
On Ryzen?
Right.
Sure. I guess if you've got a 5950 that it pulls around 140 at full blast.
Right, but it
It's,
never really
officially
exceeds
105
that.
TDP watt.
Right. But under no circumstances does it ever go over like 140.
Oh, no.
Even
You got to really push
momentarily.
it hard to do that. But, under normal circumstances, if you have everything at stock, which, the stock kind of changes with Agisa,
Yeah.
it'd be nice.
yeah, with
but
Zen
I
2
guess
anyway.
progress is painful. It's like birth.
That's what they
It's all
tell
worth
me.
it in the end, somehow.
Yes.
Like 24 years later when they finally move out of the house. But
Or wreck the car. One of the things might happen.
Intel, the PL1,
That happens.
PL2 numbers, they're something that are adjustable on the board. So you could set it to 125 max for your PL1 and PL2. And just
your
have it
performance is going to be
exactly. If you look at any review where they measure performance over time and you enforce power limits versus not enforcing power limits, well, the high clocks were sustained the entire time if the power limits were not engaged. At that point, you're literally only battling thermals. So if you have a beefy cooler, don't enforce any power limits. Yeah, your processor pulls 300 watts, but you get great performance all the time. It's like overclocking, only, it's. I think it's a little.
It's perfectly fine.
I think the only problem to me is if your cooler can handle it. Because if we're enthusiasts and we want more performance, I would personally take what I consider, trouble-free overclocking. The problem is that it's by default.
Do you want to see the ancestor to this chip?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have it?
I had to actually go.
Is that a Slocket? Nope.
No, it's the AMD FX 9590. The 200 watt or 201 watt TDP, I think, is the official. And it's shipped with a double-sided, double-size 120 millimeter all-in-one cooler, which it's sitting back there, but I don't feel like getting it.
It's fair.
But yeah,
Wasn't
it
exactly
was
about a
stout cooling for the time, and it often jumped in between the 4.7 and 5.0 under load, under varying circumstances. It would often, drop down. So it wasn't a fun chip to test, but it did hit those 5 gigahertz speed, and for the time, it competed well with the 3770K. And that's it. It's a small heater from AMD because they could.
I could never get it to consistently run without internally clocking itself down. I remember testing one.
It was like a sawtooth.
Yes, exactly. And I thought there was something wrong with my system, and I tried different boards and different coolers, and no, it hit
What'd you do,
4
Josh?
gigahertz
Open the window?
down, and
Suddenly it stabled out.
Yeah, Only in winter does it ever hit 5 consistently. See, in a room specially prepared. But I found out around here that power supplies don't like to boot up if they're like colder than 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, it's a bizarre thing. You know, I went back in the day when my house was not nearly as heated, and I lived in a different one, and it was probably in the 40s in the back room, and I was like, oh, I'm going to overclock this like the wind. Turn it on, doesn't boot. Got to let it warm up, then take it back, then it'll boot. But yeah, anyway.
This, by the way,
Ancient history.
This is the workload with the sawtooth effect. Well, it's just, this is the way that this workload is presented on this chart, but Ian has this custom benchmark. It's based on, I guess, his university research. AVX 512, very, very heavy benchmark that hits these 280, 290 watt peaks. They're not sustained, but the processor is hitting that number. So it's ridiculous, but I mean, we've talked about this 300 watt number, kind of like that's the theoretical max if you don't enforce any limits. So I'm guessing he's doing this like out of box state. I thought that was kind of his take on the whole PL1, PL2 tau thing was, hey, if the motherboards are shipped this way, we test this way. Other tests are not as extreme, but I mean, here's POV Ray. I'll just show that real quick because it seems like all anybody wants to talk about is the power draw here. So let's forget about performance to talk about power draw. Power is high. Temperature.
I can bring up something else.
High. Yes.
Why AVX 512 on a desktop part?
To differentiate from the competition. That's something that they point to. This has been a bullet point for a couple of years now, where Intel
AVX2 is only now just starting to get some, true momentum in the consumer space, and even then, it's limited. I mean, AVX, sure, there's more stuff that supports it, but still, it's, FMA3 is far more supported. It just SSE4. But yeah, they're pushing AVX 512. And I guess that, if you're talking chicken and the egg, you should do it. But holy cow, does that beat the crap out of the CPU thermals? Just the way they have it set up and just the physics behind those kind of calculations. I don't know. I think it's a bridge too far. But
look at this same CPU AVX2 versus AVX 512, like you're saying. AVX2 on 224.56 watts peak draw, and then you move up to AVX 512 and you're hitting 291. So
yeah, I mean you're gaining performance. There's no doubt about it. If you've got native AVX 512 code, it runs, and it has advantages over AVX2. But yeah, it's it just seems like it's a couple of years too early for desktop. Maybe I'm just being, I don't know, contrarian, because that's what I'm paid to do. But the software support isn't there in the consumer space because there's going to be one set of desktop processors that support it, and there are drawbacks to it thermally.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's again, chicken and the egg. I mean, if you don't put it out there, people don't develop for it. But at the same time, people will look at the complexity of AVX 512 and look at how many other CPUs support AVX2 and do it okay. What are you going to spend your time on? It just seems like an artificial jump. But again, I'm not a programmer. I'm not doing high-end AI, machine learning stuff, engineering computation, simulations, things that if you're really cutting-edge software developer and you can utilize that kind of space, then sure, But I mean, how many developers out there actually do that? I mean, Esri certainly doesn't, because they just barely got into 64-bit, and they're still like single core, and they're the number one GIS company in the world. And it just, maybe Esri is not the best example because they suck. And I'm probably going to
stop
get sued.
Adobe.
But anyway, no, it's it's a conundrum. What do you do? I mean, they design it in there, and it takes up die space, and it takes up a lot of power when enabled. And
you can point at it and say, we can do it. They can't.
Yeah, and I mean, they've still got, 78% of the desktop CPU market, or overall CPU market? Yeah. I mean, AMD has made strides, but Intel is really the only one who can manufacture this stuff. However, AMD finally has the 5600X and 5800X and enough supply that you can find it easily online at MSRP.
Yep.
So,
what is the MSRP of the 700K? Do we know that?
$429?
Isn't that what
you're within $30?
I don't know. I don't remember if that was part of the announcement or not. I'll just quickly show the conclusion page here has some bullet points on performance here. Single thread floating point was up 19%.
Not that's workload dependent though. He was seeing as low as like +7 in a few areas. So it's not 19 across the board.
Okay. Right. Multi-thread integer 7.3. It's on the screen. Single thread integer plus 13%. So it's math heavy workloads that'll see the 19. But they're picking the best data point that is, something that they can prove.
Shocking.
And of course.
Yeah, no, but to go back, I know I've been throwing a lot of shade. The actual design teams at Intel, with the tools that they've been given, they still make a very good processor. And so they're able to extract even more IPC from the last generation, even though they had to port this design back to 14 nanometer and cut a bunch of stuff and get it so that it hits, die size constraints and thermal constraints, when this is designed for a higher performance, theoretically better yielding 10 nanometer process, which of course, the better yielding is the issue. I mean, if you do a one of these designs on a 10 nanometer SuperFET and they're getting their usual yields, then this would probably be a much better processor. Hitting that consistently max 125 watt to 150 watt at max load, maybe, and sub 200 at least. But they can't do it. And so they had to adjust the design rules. They had to adjust the designs tremendously. They still wanted to get these improvements in IPC. They were able to achieve that. They were able to shoehorn AVX 512 in here, even though it may not be the best decision. They were able to do it. The cost of this is thermals. Otherwise, it's running at the clock speeds they need it to. They've achieved the IPC improvements in both integer and floating point, and they've also expanded AVX. So in many ways, this is an impressive part because they've been able to shove all of this stuff in here into an older node because they simply had to get it in producible numbers. So hats off to the engineers at Intel. They worked overtime on this to get it to work as well as it did. But it's still, I mean, it's their manufacturing arm. I mean, it's they've been in trouble for a long time now, and who knows if Kick and Pat will turn it around, or if Murthy getting out of there has allowed other ideas and engineers to get in there and change things. But when you're dealing with process nodes, change happens in years, not months. So it's going to be interesting to see. But again, from a pure engineering standpoint and what they were able to do with the tools that they had, it's impressive. Sadly, they're competing against another impressive design that's on a much better process node. So, but cool. It's neat to see this stuff out there. It's options for consumers, and if you can handle the heat, then stay in the kitchen.
And on the boring side, their I/O is dramatically improved with PCIe 4 and I think additional PCIe lanes, right? 4 more lanes, or at least they're talking to.
There's 4 more lanes off.
They're talking about an extra 4.0s, yeah.
Yeah, and they've essentially doubled the bandwidth as well.
They've caught up from AMD only a year and 8 months.
Yes, but it is an improvement beyond just what's going on inside the CPU.
Alan Maltavino
I/O
and his testing, their PCI 4.0 implementation is up to 20% faster than AMD's, plus or minus 15%.
Okay,
that is the word. Yeah.
Clever. Plus or minus 100%, it is twice as fast.
It is.
I like where your head is at.
Any more commentary on this before we move on? I mean, obviously we'll have probably. Actually,
do you have any commentary, Sebastian? I mean, I ran roughshod over everyone on this, and I really probably shouldn't have because I didn't read as much as. But I have thoughts.
Well, as the only Canadian on the program, I have no comment.
Oh.
Kent, how do you feel about newer, hotter CPUs with fewer cores, but slightly higher IPC?
I think Intel had to go this route. They had to put something out there, anything out there, because their CPUs are dropping in price, which is something we've never seen before, is new Intel processors on shelves going down in price. I believe the 10900K was able to be sold for like $399 just a couple of weeks ago. But I wish that they could move on to their new process node, but they just don't have the yields for it yet.
Very true. And I that's a good point about the price, because that's what they've had to resort to be competitive with AMD, is that we've seen really low, aggressively low prices. Was that $399 a Micro Center price, or was that on like Amazon Newegg?
I saw it for a brief time on Newegg at $399. And it's still at $425.
That's low.
The 10700K Micro Center price was $279.
I'd still be wondering about the margins of these things because, with AMD, I mean, with the 5600 and the 5800, it is a 2-chip affair. And the I/O die is still pretty big as compared to the CPU. CPU die is not that much, but you've also got to pay extra to have a more complex substrate to connect everything at high speeds. And when you add a third chip in there, that increases the cost again by a significant margin, and the complexity of the manufacture of that substrate, as well as, placing 3 different chips on there versus just placing one. And so there are still advantages that Intel has in terms of price and margins for a finished product that that AMD does not. However, the chiplet strategy of being able to mix and match qualities of chiplets to get higher end parts, I would think, I'm sorry, I'm freezing here, but when you're weighing out the cost of everything, I think it is still slightly more efficient, but the margins are going to be smaller unless you have just an absolute massive die that you're not yielding worth crap. And of course, Intel doesn't put anything out to market unless it's got pretty good yields, especially on the notebook and desktop. Xeons, that's a whole different ball game because your margins are really crazy there. But yeah, for desktop, it's if you could find out the actual prices of these things and really compare and contrast, that would be interesting. Because is AMD too early with the multi-chiplet thing? Is Intel still right in the area it needs to be? Or when you're talking about these 5900s, 5950s, versus a monolithic Intel die at that same price, who's getting the better bargain? And I think we're right at that kind of tipping point between the old philosophy and the new. And of course, Intel is going to be going with chiplets of their own type and packaging. Probably either next generation or the generation after that. But AMD was early, and are they paying a penalty? I don't know. I mean,
historically, aren't they
doing,
usually a little too early on things?
No, like PCI 3.0, no.
Oh, I'm thinking further back.
2.0, no.
The original dual core, and the way that they did that
they put
versus
that into a monolithic die versus what Intel was doing with 2 Pentium 4s on the GTL Plus bus, and
then jumping into HBM, also brilliant, but a little bit too early.
Yeah, I mean it's
too expensive, certainly.
Well,
yeah. I mean, there just wasn't enough uptake of HBM to get somebody other than Samsung. Samsung was pretty much the only HBM producer for quite a while, and they weren't doing it in the volumes that needed to be done to get the price point down. So, they're cutting edge, and they've done well. I mean, their Infinity fabric that they got initially from C Micro ages ago, and of course C Micro just ceased to exist, but the technology and the basis of it lives on. It's fascinating to see what they have done, and I mean they're hitting on all cylinders right now. I mean they had a $3 billion quarter this last one. It's just absolutely smashing records for the company. And I mean, they're shipping products that their margins continue to increase. And only now are we starting to see 5000 series in good quantity online, at least, for the 600 and 5800. But they've been selling out of that stuff. And their 3000 series have continued to sell as well because they're still good CPUs. They're not as good as the 5000.
They were available.
Series.
That was part of it.
Yeah. You started to say something.
That's the really telling thing about the why there is this 11th gen that's again on the 14 nanometer process is that the prices on the Intel processors are dropping, and you can't until just the last few days you couldn't buy a 5000 series. Just by going online and ordering it. You had to, enter the Newegg shuffle. So Intel prices were dropping and you couldn't even buy the competition. So that's very telling to me.
Yeah. It's a good point.
And moving on.
I want to say that this is the absolute best time to be an AMD fan because you can jump up and down and point and laugh at Intel. This is cyclical. Guys, don't get too...
It comes back.
Because this happened with Athlon when it was the fastest, cheapest, best processor ever. And it happened again. But think
the
about
Athlon
this.
64.
Yep. But then there was Bulldozer. When there was just the dark times. So now they have the Zen core and it's amazing. And they jumped on chiplets early. It's fantastic. And Intel is scrambling and they're doing things like backporting laptop processors to desktop and ridiculously high power draw to get the clocks up and everything that they're doing. So, including lowering prices in the retail market. So I anticipate this will look different in 5 years, but who knows? Maybe this is the beginning of the end. But ultimately, AMD's problem is a fab problem too, not Intel's, which is they can't get their process working at volume. But AMD's is simply that they are a fabless company, and they completely rely on TSMC. And they are producing how many different products at 7 nanometer right now? They have console GPUs or console APUs. They have the desktop parts. They have graphics cards, all on 7 nanometer, and they have 2 generations of CPUs and 2 generations of graphics cards on 7 nanometer. So
well, the thing that's limiting
your 5
me
years
is not so much the amount of SKUs that they have, but the amount of wafer starts that they're able to get from TSMC, and that is going to be their problem unless Global Foundries gets a several billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar injection from the U.S. government to start producing more chips locally.
But how long would it take for them to spin up new fabs? It would take years.
Well,
5
that was
years.
my point.
5
Your
to
5
6 years.
years,
Yep, 5 years
is probably going to include that new TSMC plant that
In Arizona.
building in. Yes, that's correct.
Where are they
Yep.
getting the water from? Have you been to Arizona?
They don't
They'll
have
truck it in.
apparently they're
They'll truck it in.
experienced at this.
Of a water
They know where to get the
pipeline.
water from.
Yeah. Lake Mead only has so much water, and Vegas is taking a lot of it.
Well, real quick, let's move on because this is going to be the longest podcast of all time. If we don't do something about it
will.
now.
Yep.
SolarWinds. Jeremy, you've talked to us about this before. What's going on with them now?
Okay, well, we'll lead with that, but that's not actually why I posted this, because it's the part afterwards that's that little, bon mot that makes things feel a little bit better, at least. Because honestly, the SolarWinds just keeps getting worse. There's a company called Mandiant Threat Intelligence that likes to dig around a lot of the public malware repositories where companies throw stuff up. Like, I see this. It doesn't look like anything. It's not coming up on any of my databases. It's not getting detected, but I know it's bad. Can you guys just take a look at it? And this is a thing. And so something that resembles part of Sunburst was apparently first uploaded back in August of 2020, which makes us significantly older than we thought it was, or at least hope it wasn't this old. And to make it funny, this little Sunburst thing, which is what they've called it to separate, or Sun Shuttle, to separate it from Sunburst rather, is a second stage backdoor. So this will be the way that you're already the infection already present is able to then talk to a home server and back again and do stuff. This is relatively terrifying, and this is, unfortunately, it's hard to get even more upset than IT professionals are right now about what's going on with SolarWinds. It is a complete and utter nightmare, and every time you wake up, it gets a little bit worse. But what makes it funny is that over the past year, 4 major cybercrime forums have found most of their members being doxxed and a bunch of Bitcoin stolen. And for some reason, it just seems odd. They're actually upset about this. It's like, if what they do to people was done to them, that somehow it's unfair. But if they just do it to other people, it's okay. So please join me in playing a concerto of the world's smallest violins for these idiots, and hope that a part of this is a bunch of intelligent white hats going, you know what? If you guys had anything to do with the nightmare we're living in right now, join us.
Stick it to the bad guys.
It's just nice to see the criminals getting a little bit of a comeback.
Say goodnight to the bad guy, right? Am I right?
You're right.
I don't get that reference
Are we
at
the
all.
bad guys?
Not today.
Tony Montana,
Yeah.
are you serious?
Moving on. Tech Spot. Took a
I
look.
think we found another movie for Sebastian to watch
I
without
think we
his
find at least 3 movies every night.
2,
Yeah.
3. Yeah.
I've seen at least a dozen movies in my life. All right.
No, you've watched the same 10 movies over and over again.
That
is what you're
counts.
saying.
It's all anime.
Tech Spot. I have watched not a lot of anime. There are people who watch a lot of anime. I watched-
Star Trek,
Define a
Star
lot.
Wars, and anime. That's it.
I mean, is there anything else? Tech Spot has released.
Voyager. Can we talk about Voyager?
Not talking about Voyager.
not-
That was so
that's next
disappointing. RTX 3070. Did you know that there's more than one GPU with that name? We've talked about this. We've talked about the fact that there's more than one mobile
but this
GPU.
is-
But do you know
with that name.
how you'll be able to know?
But yeah,
Yes.
the performance? Well,
Well,
Well, the performance is
80 and 115 watt variants tested. And
it's
laptop
not
and
just
desktop.
the name; it's the performance.
So, well, right, yeah. Well, I wish it was the name so that you could immediately identify the performance.
Well, but we got
This is a 3070, which means it has this instead of this
No,
3070,
well,
which has that.
yeah,
Where
but not always.
are the charts? Here we go.
Benchmarks.
Metro Exodus. Okay, the 80 to 95 watt. What's the CPU here? A 10870.
10870 versus a 5900 HX.
So they do the 1080s, but then they do 1440 below.
Okay. Again, different CPUs.
Well, it's two laptops.
totally different
it's not like you
platform.
can.
Okay.
Okay, so XMG, you have to make the same as the Gigabyte board, or Gigabyte, you have to make the same as the XMG,
I
because
know.
right now they're the only two going.
Obviously, there's a big gap here. Wouldn't you know it? The 115, 130 watt 3070, even with the same 45 watt CPU class, it'd be a lot faster. We're talking about, here's Borderlands 3. This is 1080 Ultra, 78 FPS for the 95 watt max, and 91.5 FPS for the 130 watt max. So that's going to be the story. If you
Yeah,
have
but that's a
more,
1080.
yeah, I know. Where's the? I guess I got to scroll more. Let's go scroll. Where's 1440? More 1080. Although really with laptop, aren't you gaming at 1080?
It's probably what the screen is. You're right.
Yeah, most gaming laptops are
External
1080.
monitor.
It's those like productivity machines with like a, you know,
Yeah.
8K display that's like 400% scaling all the time.
Yeah, you're right.
It doesn't work right for some reason.
I don't think
Oh,
there's
somebody
somebody
asked-
else.
14.
What?
Somebody just asked in the YouTube channel, what does user benchmark have to say? That's a story
That's
we
ju-
didn't talk about.
Yes.
We should have mentioned
There was
this.
a funny user benchmark write-up on the new Intel processors. We'll
Yeah,
get to that next time.
You should go read that.
Read the
People should
TechSpot
read that.
article. It's got a lot of benchmarks. If you want to see over and over and over again that the higher wattage version of the 3070 will outperform the lower wattage version of the 3070.
And then you get really depressed when you throw in the desktop version.
Oh, I didn't even scroll that far. There's too much scrolling. I thought I was scrolling too much, but I didn't scroll enough.
No, they've decided to go with the single page layout. So you just have to scroll. And
You know, we have
scroll
that too,
and
but we have this
scroll
nice
and-
little floating table of contents to help
Yeah,
navigate.
it's
nice.
classy, isn't it?
It is.
That's why
But yeah,
books
so,
were invented in the past, Sebastian. There was too much scrolling.
But
Where?
So yeah, if you're
by
looking
the
at
way,
at 1080p, if you're looking at the 1550 watt versus the desktop,
yeah,
on average, the desktop is 35% faster. Now, if you go to 1440p without Optimus, just to make sure that you're not cheating too much, it's only 30% faster than the 115 watt laptop variant. You don't want to know how much faster than the 80 watt. So it's a 3070, but it's not.
They all are.
they should have been different names.
Excuse? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. By the
Maybe
way,
like
I
a
just have to
Max
say,
Q
Or at least
something
Max
could have been
Q,
used.
Max
yeah,
Q, something
that
like
helped.
that. Yeah.
TechSpot has some of the best, if not the best, still photography in the game. I just have to say, this is a great shot.
Oh, Brett, he's calling you out on air. Jeez.
Hey, it's made in Taiwan.
I'm ignoring it. I'm ignoring it.
These are great photos.
What
Look
he's
at this. Look
doing
at
is
that
he's
nice soft bokeh in the background.
he's just goading me or whoever to a higher level of performance.
Although, I don't know. I feel like this could be
If
better
he would
than
send
maybe
us some
here.
laptops to review as opposed to
sending me
these
laptops.
giant
I'm not gonna send you
cases.
laptops.
actually, I don't like that one. The one you were pointing out, I don't like that particular shot.
Yeah, but the first one I showed with the bottom
I like
corner,
that one.
that was
It
great.
was a bit artistic. Yep, I
yeah,
liked it.
very artistic. This is a great photo.
Yep.
I should have taken it. I love the background.
They got the keyboard.
Their background
They got
is
the
great.
keyboard lit. They got the keyboard lit at the same time. So
It's a little overexposed on the left edge, but it's okay. All right.
Fall off.
Let's pause right here to hear from this week's podcast sponsor.
Hey, what if I told you the rabbit hole was deeper than you know? What if I told you there are systems out there keeping a log of the things that you do? It's creepy. It's part of the game with internet service providers like AT&T or Comcast, as they store logs of every website you've ever visited and can legally sell this data to anyone. I combat this by using ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN reroutes your internet connection through their secure servers so your internet providers can't see or log what you do online. The obvious question then becomes, well, if I'm routing all my data through a VPN, doesn't that mean the VPN system can see what I'm doing? Good thinking. And many VPNs claim to have no logging policy, but in fact have been caught logging customer activities. ExpressVPN is moving towards total privacy for your data by utilizing trusted server technology. They were the first major VPN provider to engineer all the VPN servers to run completely in RAM, greatly limiting the ways in which data can be exploited. This makes it impossible for their servers to actually store any data, including logs of any ExpressVPN customers. Don't take my word for it, or ExpressVPN's for that matter. They are quite confident in their no-logging claim, as they had one of the biggest assurance firms, PricewaterhouseCoopers, audit their technology stack to ensure they were doing exactly what they said. So stop letting others keep logs of what you do online. Visit expressvpn.com/PCPer right now and find out how you can get 3 months free. That's expressvpn.com/PCPer to learn more. That's expressvpn.com/PCPer.
More stuff.
This one's funny. I like this one.
What's funny?
No, I like this next one. Hey, we're back.
The pun, Jeremy's pun. Corsair makes a splash.
Oh, you know what? I actually didn't notice that.
How could you not?
Corsair,
Hydro X. We talked about the Hydro X system. I think it was like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now. A long time ago.
Not this Hydro X system.
No,
you got to show the bloody picture. It's just so absurd, and we've made jokes about this in the past.
Wait, which
like somebody's going to do this?
Guru. It's the Corsair MP600 Pro Hydro X 2 terabyte. It's an SSD made for liquid cooling.
It's a gum stick that's liquid cooled.
I mean, yes, but think of the performance.
Well, I mean, yes.
You know, Alan is shaking in rage right now.
Yes.
Because he's thinking, oh, hey, great. We've got this controller that's actually heating up the NAND to make the NAND more efficient. But we're running cold water over the NAND to make it less efficient.
Yes.
Then why on single chip NANDs do they put it so far away from the controller, which we'll talk about later?
But look at the performance.
It drops by 20C. If you look, that looks like the performance of a M.2 SSD.
Well, the writes are really high, but it would be telling if it was sustained over a long period of time.
And that's
SSD,
the only
that's
way in
the
hell this makes
Phison
sense.
18E?
Yeah,
it is.
E18,
yes.
Yeah. E18. Sorry.
Yeah. It's essentially the Sabrent Rocket 4.
Plus.
Yes, sorry. Not the Sabrent Rocket, not the Sabrent Rocket 4
with
Plus.
a liquid cooled heatsink.
But it'll drop temperatures by up to 20 degrees Celsius, which is stupid. And you'll notice how nicely it snugs up to your GPU. Because this is another fun thing about this, is you're very limited on the amount of places you can stick the damn thing. You're not going to be able to fit it on the back.
Or which motherboards that this will work with.
Yeah. There's
your
a lot of
GPU is
motherboards
going to cover up a lot of M.2.
And
which already sounds like a terrible idea.
And a lot of motherboards come with plates that act as passive heat sinks over the M.2.
You know, I think this may be a niche product.
You think so?
Yeah, for Alan. And that's it.
Because
he's the only one that writes 100 terabytes a day.
Oh,
yeah.
That might happen.
Because literally, that's the only thing you could use this for. If you are literally beating the hell out of this 2 terabyte drive and doing 10, 20 total drive rates every day, all day, day in, day out.
He doesn't even use the M.2 slots. He just sticks it. He gets a 16x riser and uses the slots on that.
Correct. That's not a joke.
That is. I'm not making that up. That's exactly what he does.
Yeah.
But that's, he does it for his own reasons. Obviously, it puts it in a better position thermally, especially if he has his own airflow solution, but he's more
And-
on the side of keep your NAND warm. It likes to be warm. But the controller...
does.
And keep your
controllers
powder
get
dry.
very hot on those 500
That-
drives.
That's
This
why
drive
Alan
does
keeps
neither,
his
Josh.
NAND in the bed with him to keep it warm.
So it's hot
Or
next
his
day.
name.
Lord
keeps
knows
him
he has
warm.
enough of it. Well, we would hope that he does. Like Scrooge McDuck, he dives into a
NAND
silo
chips.
filled with NAND chips.
If only he could get one of those ASRock with the M.2 connectors for the FX 5990. He would. Everything would
Consider
be
himself
toasty.
lucky.
Toasty. Anyway, moving along.
Yes, be quiet. They've launched a new line.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean
Power
to be
supplies.
offensive.
So fresh. No one's ever made that joke.
Never.
Dark Power 12 series of PSUs has launched. Feel the power of the dark side, says, oh, this has to be Jeremy. Is this Jeremy?
It's
yes,
Jeremy.
Yeah, it was a cheap one, but it's been a
yeah.
busy day.
So what is up with these? I think the deal is... because
It's titanium.
Is it titanium
It's
rated?
80 plus titanium rated. So take that, put it in your pipe, and smoke it. Because I mean, the Dark Power's been around for forever, and like I think you did the Dark Tower Power 12 Plus or Pro.
Pro. We looked at a Pro, whatever the higher end one is,
Yeah.
because this is going to be a little bit more affordable. Doesn't go quite up as high, right? Up 1,000 watts is the max, right?
Affordable.
Well,
Actually, going to say it's available.
There's that.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Good luck finding anything of 1,000 watts or more at retail. Those don't really exist.
Yeah. Essentially, the difference is that the Pro is fully digital with
Okay.
PFC, whereas with the 12, you got an analog active rectifier and such.
Gotcha.
But other than that, it's built off the same FSP body, which means you've got really nice high quality caps, and they put a lot of effort into it and making sure that the AC to DC bridge is properly working, and they provide an overclock key, which you haven't run into this. It switches it from a 4-rail 12-volt design to a single rail. Regardless of how you want to do it, it'll handle up to 70 amps, which is quite nice for a PSU of this power at 850. Be quiet. You've got the fancy frameless frameless fans. So, at max load, they were hearing just under 36 dBA. Essentially, unless you've got really good case fans, that's the same. It will be indistinguishable. And, overall, it's a little bit laid back. There's no RGBs on it, which a lot of people are like, especially me and others. And it also is nice that, at least part of it can be modded, painted, whatever color you want, as opposed to just glowing. Overall, it came out with really, really good marks straight across the board, but it is not just hard to find PSUs right now. Trying to find titanium-rated ones, which has very specific components in them, is next to impossible. I think Kit Guru spotted one for sale in Korea or South Korea, and that was about it.
Is it just because of the efficiency for mining, or is it because those components are scarce, or both?
Scarce.
A bit of both, but scarcity because,
Yeah, power supplies were one of the first products that were affected by the tariffs.
Yeah.
Just over a year ago, I bought an EVGA G Plus 1000 for $98 from Best Buy, and that same power supply now is around $250.
Let that sink in. It's
been
ridiculous how expensive.
I've been
PSUs
talking with
are.
our Be Quiet person who helps us with reviews and such, and they've been trying to get us some of these power supplies for 2 months. And internally they have very little ways of even getting them to the reviewers. So
this is why I still have a Mushkin 1000 watt power supply in my test rig.
Why did you wait until this year of all years to complain about that? You complained about this.
Well,
early
I complained
2020.
last year.
You'd be
didn't
swimming
help.
in power supplies. I don't
I'm just
recall
getting
that
three of them
conversation.
running.
Josh. I don't recall the conversation.
No.
You only need pen and paper to fool this OpenAI computer vision code, says the header of this next article.
You know what? I wanted to
This
get
has
like
be Jeremy.
I wanted to get like pieces of tape. Everybody puts it on their head and pretends to be someone else. Like I wanted like a Josh thing that I just put on my head, or Sebastian, held up.
You
So-
could put one of your Apple stickers on there, and it would identify you as an iPod.
That's the next story.
Oh, what? Not this story? Okay.
No, that's the next story.
What is this story, Jeremy? It's from the Register, therefore it's a Jeremy story.
Yeah.
Hey, other people read that, Rag. I'm sure of it. I don't know who.
Not
But.
in this group.
So you'll recall a year or two ago, it was discovered that you could fool the Tesla autopilot into doing 80 in a 30 zone with a little bit of black electrical tape. So that at least made sense, because even you might be fooled that 3 was actually an 8, except for the fact that you're driving through a school zone. But these guys found they've been trying to make their recognition system be able to, as their example says, recognize Spider-Man in a movie, in a comic, and in text. It has had an unforeseen consequence, where if you take something and you take a piece of paper and you write a name on it and stick it to it, their AI will go off of that. So as you can see there, the Granny Smith apple is now a different type of apple. And this has worked for quite a few other things. And it goes to show you how bizarre training AI visual recognition models can get. Because it makes perfect sense. I mean, you're trying to get it to associate an image and text. In another, it's a dead giveaway that, every single phone looks pretty much the same from the back, but, oh, look, there's a little logo there. Unfortunately, Clip has gone a little bit overboard and now believes anything that it sees written. And I just find this absolutely hilarious.
So if in my
Stand by.
line of work, we identify Arctic terns, and I'm
Yes.
pretty sure that if you taped a sign on the back of an Arctic tern that said crow, it would recognize neither. But again, that's just training.
Oh,
Know what I'm
no,
saying?
do more fun. Like, put caribou on the back of it and see what happens.
I was pleased to see this. Apple discontinuing the Intel-based iMac Pro. We know that they're discontinuing all Intel things, but
Yes, they
the
are,
iMac Pro
but,
was such a weird product anyway. It was like, do you want a Xeon? Do you
it was
want
kind of a
ECC
stopgap.
memory? Was it a stop? I
It
mean,
was.
it was kind of. It was also. It basically, because the iMac as a product is more, I guess we'll say nimble. Like they would upgrade the CPUs and GPUs in them on a much more frequent basis than any of the pro level stuff. You would get into the situation where a previous year's iMac Pro was slower than the current year's regular iMac 5K.
That is correct. But the form factor, while ostensibly may
Was
have
the
looked
same.
similar, well, there were some differences internally as to kind of because the Xeon board layout was a little bit different.
Sure, but if they
internally.
didn't have a thicker chassis, so the things were still thermally constrained.
Oh, indeed, they definitely were.
So it's like, why would I spend way more money? We're talking $5,000
Well,
for an iMac Pro that's
when it
thermally
came out-
constrained.
When it came out, it was definitely the, oh my gosh, we need to get something into the marketplace before the real iMac Pro came out, and this trash can thing, we agree, is an embarrassment. So for a couple of years, they had the iMac Pro thing going on. I know some people who bought them. They're reasonably
you
happy
do.
with them.
But what do you think of the tissue box?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Wait, the G4?
Oh, what's
It's
wrong
the
with
one that looked like a little the thing you'd put up on top of a Kleenex box that totally passive, no
it? Yeah, that one.
fans.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
never heard it
Apple.
called
Early 2000s.
I never heard it called the tissue box, but
Yeah, it looks
maybe
like
I
Oh,
missed
it
that
was.
one.
Looks like a
Yeah, the
tissue
G4
box.
Cube.
At
No,
work,
no,
we
the
literally
cube.
have a tissue box and a trash can sitting beside each other because there's one Apple fanatic that just won't.
I mean,
pick 'em up.
you'd pull one up, blow your nose, throw it away.
It looks like one. Look at
I
this.
agree.
Look, see, it's got a
I
slot
never
there.
heard it called that though. Toaster.
Well,
yeah, it looked more like a
you
toaster.
obviously didn't hang around in my
World's
circle.
worst toaster.
Probably not. Probably not.
Yeah, inefficient to the
But
extreme as a toaster.
that
I agree.
has
But now
nothing to
they've gone
do-
with cheese grater, so that's fine, right?
That I know. That has nothing to do with the demise of the iMac Pro.
No,
And,
the M1 has everything to do with the demise of the iMac Pro.
You're correct.
Well,
You're
not
correct,
the M1.
sir.
It'll be M1X, M2, whatever they're
Well,
going to
maybe
have.
M1, M2. Yeah.
By the way,
I
the
think the
rumors about the next Pro, the price tags they're talking here. It's
Oh, are you going to
Getting
tell me you're being
Pro
shocked about an Apple
again.
price?
no,
Try not
but
to be
we're
sure.
talking like SGI workstation pricing here. Almost,
And?
not quite.
Well, you know
but
what?
Like
It's not
much for the wheels.
$8,000.
It's not meant for you. You know what? Just pass. It's not meant for you. Move on.
That was
Who's the
resident Apple
$300
apologist.
monitor stand meant for?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Certain
Who's the
people-
$1,000? What about
Casters?
the $400, $500 casters? Yeah, who are those for?
The different people.
You.
Different people. The people who get the
Yeah.
gold-plated iPhone.
That's that.
All right, let's see. Quickly looking at it. Well, I'll quickly go through this review and then I'll let Kent talk about his. But we looked at. Okay, you know that Samsung released the 980 Pro,
No.
and
Do you want to do the
Windows
OVH
16.
picture that I just posted?
No. Where in Discord?
Yeah, it's in the PC Per Discord.
Okay.
Oh, is that what that is?
OVH, a major cloud provider in around the world, actually. One
Yes.
of their major server buildings went up in flames. And so the picture you're looking at has the caption, and I quote, "Rare pictures of data migration between clouds."
There are a lot of people crying right now, but I'm not.
There are some 40,000 websites that
Yeah.
need to be rebuilt from scratch.
Remember, kids, the number of backups you have is the number of backups you have minus one.
Have you ever heard of Iron Mountain?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Iron Mountain was a customer of theirs for some stuff. It would not surprise me
That's
at all.
moving in the wrong direction. So
Okay.
I guess
You're supposed to be able
Rust,
to
the
recover.
game, they had 25 servers in that facility, and their entire EU infrastructure is just gone.
gone.
So if you're playing Rust and you had things saved to their little cloud,
Oops.
It's time to pick.
Isn't that a game where you start from scratch anyways? So
pretty much, I guess.
Because you know what
Chance
happens
to start
sometimes.
over.
Data centers just explode.
It's true.
Okay.
What's that from?
Samsung 980, not Pro, just 980, vanilla 980. It's an SSD. It's a Gen 3 SSD. It has very little it has something in common with the 980 Pro. I think they're using the same NAND. Different controller, different interface, obviously. This is going to hit a lower cost segment, but you know what it is? It's Samsung's first DRAM-less drive. There's no DRAM. It's under the specs here. DRAM cache,
What's the
Nothing.
controller?
Samsung in-house
In-house.
controller.
Oh wow.
So we're talking, we have the 1 terabyte on offer here, 3,500 megabytes per second, sequential reads, max, 3,000 is what they rate sequential writes, up to 500K IOPS at 16 thread, QD32 random read, that's random 4K, up to 480K on writes. And, you know, just your typical M.2 drive, single-sided, same thermal, like, solution where they don't use heat sinks, they use this like thermal pad on the bottom, and you've got your two chips here on opposite sides of the PCB.
Why are they so far apart?
Probably thermals. You don't want the thermals from the controller to overheat the NAND, I'm guessing.
Even
you
the
want
silicon
NAND?
needs to stay an arm's reach apart.
You want hot NAND, or else you got to pour
You want
water on it.
warm, not cold NAND. But anyway, so they're because this is their first foray into a DRAMless controller. They were explaining what the host memory buffer is. This is part of the NVMe spec since 1.2. I believe this is an NVMe 1.4 drive. So it can use 64 megabytes of your system's memory. It's not as fast as having DRAM on board.
Okay.
But here's the big thing. Larger write buffer, the SLC cache. Now they're comparing this to the 970 Evo. Now, back in the day, Samsung drives came in Evo and Pro varieties. Now we have Pro and non-Pro, I'm guessing, unless Evo pops up. But
the 980 MEH.
Yeah.
The Meh?
Hey.
The Meh.
I'm sorry, this is the most boring
It is,
Samsung
but look,
watch I've ever seen.
Here's the thing. They are targeting a mainstream segment for the first time. So
Fair.
What's the price?
the price is the same as the 670p from last week. The sale price is the 670p, like 129 for the 1 terabyte we talked about.
Yeah.
That's what this is. So it's got that kind of performance, but I would like to compare these head to head. From what I've seen online from other reviewers, it's better performance than the 670p overall at the same price.
I think that makes sense, but
They did that. I mean, it's Samsung. You'd expect them to be a performance leader over an Intel mainstream drive. But, just basically, at least in my system, when I had a queue depth of 32, 16 thread, I wasn't getting quite as high random IOPS. Well, I don't know. It could be that we were tuned differently. Plus, I was on an AMD platform. They were on an Intel platform. And Alan says Intel platforms have better storage performance. Sequential reads.
Were you running an AVX 512?
I was running AVX 512 workloads. Crystal
In a
Disk Mark
16X
7 is obviously AVX 512.
slot
Native
riser.
code.
Where you, Yeah.
But if you look at the low queue depth performance, it's all good. It's right in the middle between these Gen 4 drives and Gen 3 drives until you get to random write, single thread, just torturing it, single thread, QD1. And of course, you look at Crystal Disk Mark, it defaults to QD 32 and 16 threads. So single thread QD1 is at the bottom of the pack. It's below even the WDSN 550, which is a DRAM-less drive. Although, my understanding of that drive is, I have not verified this, it has some of its own DRAM integrated into the controller. So it does fare slightly better in these worst-case scenarios. But still, overall, this is tuned for mainstream performance. It's tuned for writes, does pretty well with lower queue depths, like QD1, QD2, where you're actually going to be using the drive most of the time in Windows. And pricing is okay. I mean, it's $129. I'd like to see it lower. I think that's the consensus out there. If this was $100, it would be like, oh, this is great, 10 cents a gig, and this is good performance. It's not QLC, and I glossed over this, but as I scroll, the total amount of write cache is huge. We're talking between 3.5 and 5.5 times the SLC cache of the 970 Evo. So they're saying it goes like 75% longer sustained writes before it runs out of cache. Now, intelligent cache up to 160 gigabytes with this 1 terabyte drive. So that depends on how much free space you have available on the drive. But they've significantly mitigated the lack of DRAM by just making the SLC cache huge, at least for sustained write operations. But without DRAM, you're never going to get the same kind of like random write performance that you would. So that's it for that drive. Probably a little too expensive right now. That's the regular price, $129. Like Intel's came out at $149 and dropped to $129, I think, somewhere like $145, $149. But everything's. And unfortunately, I read a rumor that I don't know if this is true that some of these controllers might be scarce. So this might be the next thing that starts to get really rare or expensive. I don't know. Samsung does their own.
Well, they're expecting SSD prices to go up by 8% over the next quarter. So we've now
RAM
hit the low.
RAM is
If you
already
want
increasing.
SSD, get one now because they're going to go up.
yeah, Flash is going to get more expensive.
As Kent just said, DRAM already rising.
Yeah, it already has.
DRAM is already going up. Yeah.
This year is so much. You just forget about everything else. Let's just talk about computer hardware because that's what matters. Computer hardware last year it sucked, but I think it sucked mostly because people didn't have money to spend on it, or maybe the releases weren't compelling enough for you, or AMD processors were hard to buy, that kind of a thing. The people were, scalping became rampant last year. It seemed like way, way worse than ever before for every category of product as it launched. But in 2021, it makes 2020 seem like a dream for buying hardware because
When's the last time we've seen a 3080 for sale?
forget
Even
that.
on
When was
Newegg.
the last- You can't even
Yeah.
buy pre-built systems for
No, even
with
the
any kind
bundles
of-
and the pre-builts.
Yeah, at least when the mining craze of 2017 was going on, you could just buy a PC. You might have to wait a couple weeks for it to ship. You could, commoditize, systems with OEM graphics cards in them and at least get the GPU you wanted. But now you can't even do that. Although I will say, I don't know if this has changed in the last 2 days, but HP, if you go to HP's e-store, HP Omen gaming desktops, they're selling stuff for the cost of a scalped GPU, you get a whole system. Like they had a system with a 3090 for $2,600. You can't buy a 3090 for $2,600. They're $2,800 and up on eBay when I checked that night. It's ludicrous. So if you really need a system with one of these fast GPUs, just buy it from HP because Dell, it's outrageous. It was $3,200 for a system with a 3070 in it.
So you
Newegg
guys have heard
has
of
some pre-builts listed right now with 3070s in them. One of them has a 3700X Ryzen for $1,799.
Okay.
The other has a 10700K for $1,849. That one has 16 gigs of DDR4. The Ryzen system only has it doesn't even say in the listing.
It has memory.
It has memory. It has
works.
16
It's got a
GPU.
graphics card.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
Yes.
It has a graphics
It's a
card.
graphics card with complex packaging.
You
And a
could-
power supply. It's got a power supply. It actually boots it
But
up.
is it titanium rated?
I don't care. It's got a power supply.
It's 50 gold.
Wow.
Gold.
Oh, it's gold. There you
So
go.
50
That's
gold.
not bad.
So you guys are probably familiar with Woot and how they get packages of a fair amount of things and just kind of blow them out over a period of time. I saw that they had graphics cards earlier today, and I'm like, wow, Woot has graphics cards? Let me look into that. They had both 5700 XTs and 1050 Ti's, and I'm like, wow, sold out. What a shock. How many did they have? So I went and looked at the sales stats. They had 2 of each.
For how much? For a
Regular-
1050 Ti, like $300.
It really was like $269 or something
That's
like that.
ridiculous.
It was pricey, but yeah, they had two of each.
All right. Let's go to our last story. It is a case review from Kent. Talk us through your Thermaltake View 51 tempered glass ARGB edition case review.
Yes, the Titanic View 51. This was a very interesting case. It is huge. It is absolutely huge. As I mentioned in the article, the first 3 cases I ever built in were Thermaltake cases. So this was very interesting to me to sort of go back to my roots. And it's a very attractive looking case. It does look very much like a Lian Li PCO 11 dynamic that's been supersized. It has sort of that offset for the motherboard so that the power supply can sit behind it without increasing the width of the chassis too much, even though this was still, it was 12.4 inches wide. So it's still a chunky piece of metal and glass. There are gaps in the front and top for airflow, but I measured the gaps. They're not very wide, and they, in the long run, they were very restrictive, and they tremendously hurt the performance of the chassis, which is a shame because the design of the internals of the chassis is wonderful.
Those are 200 mil fans, aren't they?
They're 200 millimeter fans
Man,
in
that
front.
is a
with
big
piece
case
of-
then.
God.
It
Yes.
doesn't look like they look like 140s. So that's
They're
a
200s.
huge case.
And then there's
No, I
more
was looking at
case.
the back and no. So restrictive
200s.
case though, were the inside, were the case sides actually bowing in from the pressure?
Is it drawing air in from the back panel? Because that's ventilated.
seems like-
God.
You
It
could.
seems like that would have been a better place to draw air in from.
Yeah.
It and there's problems there too. If you look from the other side with the panel open, it's sort of the way they've got it, the brackets there. It's a little restrictive there. It's like they've said, well, you can put a radiator here and fans, but we're also going to make it so that you can mount SSDs or
Okay.
whatever else you want.
Is it that restrictive?
And block yourself.
But I mean, if you put anything there, it absolutely is. But you'd have to shift to rear intake.
And one of the things I had actually intended when I first got this case, I had intended to build a custom loop in it just for the sort of the end photos of a completed build. Actually, Sebastian, if you can switch to me for a second. I had planned on using this reservoir. This is for a PCO11, but it fits in many of the cases that use a 360 millimeter radiator slot on the side. Any of the Landley copies that are out there will use this, and the D5 pump mounts in the back of this. This will not fit through the gaps in that bracket on the back. I could not even use this really generic reservoir pump combo because of the way they've got everything set up. And it's like they're really wanting to limit you to have to use, if you want to put a distro plate in there, you're going to have to use a Thermaltake distro plate.
Does that surprise you though? I mean, why would they want to make it so that you could use someone else's proprietary?
They're mad geniuses at Thermaltake.
It shouldn't surprise me, but most of your case manufacturers don't sort of relegate you to having to use their things. But regardless of that, the biggest problems I ran into with this case, which again were very disappointing because there's wonderful things about it. All of the radiator mounts can be just about moved side to side. So you can position them how you want. There's some really great ideas in this case, but the airflow is far too restrictive. But on top of that, the execution of the construction of the case, I had numerous problems with. Both the standoffs and the motherboard screws were very poorly finished with their black coating. I think it's a powder coat. I'm not entirely sure, but there was a lot of residue in the threads, and I constantly had motherboard screws and standoffs binding up. Several of the motherboard standoffs were actually not fully tightened down in the case when I first opened it. And a lot of it just led to binding and cross-threading. It was very frustrating to work with. And as I mentioned in the article, I have various tools and equipment from years and years of doing this to be able to deal with these problems.
Did you about go Liam Neeson there? I have very specific tools and skills.
Yes.
Very specific set of skills.
Hey, even though you couldn't do your custom loop, this is a much more accessible system build, at least. Like just an all-in-one, and it still looks very clean. There's obviously a ton of space here. You didn't put that.
Right.
Yes.
Kent, I like how the 3090 triple slot is sort of lost in the expanse of this case.
Yeah, it looks totally reasonable.
It totally looks like a hot dog that you threw down a hallway.
Right.
Bam!
There's an old one.
That looks like a little mini ITX card in this case.
Yeah, it looks like a short.
It does.
Card.
The case is monstrously huge.
But you don't get the space you need and the spaces you want.
There's that. But the biggest issue I think in the end result is the fact that the glass top and the glass front just completely destroy the airflow. It's not the worst performing case that I've tested, but this is a retail $230 case. I think you can find it for about $190. That's still very expensive for a case that at best is going to be mediocre in performance. The outer shell of it, it has this great steel internal construction, and the steel side panel is very stiff, not flexible. It's not cheaply made, but the plastic on the outside of it just was terrible. It felt like a 1976 Mattel toy or something because of where the plastic trim was. And just the airflow. There's not enough airflow with those glass panels in front and on the top. And I just couldn't, after all the problems I encountered just building two systems in it, I wouldn't want a new person to come to me and say, I bought this case because you recommended it, and it sucked. But, the build process was a pain, mainly because of the screw issues. And the end result, the airflow was just not sufficient. If they made this case with mesh on front and the top and took care of some of these quality control issues from the factory, this would be a fantastic case to build a huge custom loop in.
Yeah, I don't think you need... I don't like glass on the front just because of thermals. You can do it if there's a bigger gap. Obviously, their gaps aren't big enough for there to be sufficient airflow, like you said. And then I wonder how much the fact that they're using 200 millimeter fans up front that close to the glass, like just the way the air is being drawn in from something that wide when it goes edge to edge from the front intake. I don't know. I more and more just want airflow cases. I just want everything to have like a mesh or a slotted front. But you can do solid front panels right as long as you have like larger gaps, bigger vents.
Absolutely.
Like a good inch and a half gap. Because otherwise, it's useful.
Corsair 5000D has a very sizable gap on the side. The 802 from Be Quiet also has a sizable gap. Those are the
AnandTech
airflow.
The Fantech 719 that I reviewed at the end of 2019, which actually is still the case my system is in behind me. It is solid on top and the front. It's metal, not glass, but there is about a 3/4 of an inch gap for air to pass through all the way up both sides and along the top and at the bottom of the front as well.
Mm-hmm.
There are no airflow restrictions in that case. So it can be done, but this was not a case of it being done correctly.
So I take it you didn't like the case. Is that what I'm getting from this?
As I said, I don't like that case. I do not like that implementation of the base chassis. I would love to see that base chassis with a different exterior treatment. I think that could be a fantastic system for building a huge loop in. You could cool anything, but
you definitely are somebody who likes to do a custom loop in each case if you can. Now, what was the hard drive situation here? Like with all of that space, if you're not going to do a custom loop, could you put like 20 hard drives in this thing, or did they not have mounts for that?
There were two hard drives in spaces in the back behind the motherboard tray. I had some pictures of those. There were no other trays included. So Thermaltake may make some, but they were not included.
I forgot about this picture. They slide out the back. I mean, there's some interesting design ideas.
Like almost
at play
hot
here.
swap there.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
There's no backplane for them, I take it? Those are just the...
It's just two drive trays, no backplane.
Yeah, but they're accessible from the outside in a typical sort of like server RAID boot disk configuration kind of thing.
You do have to remove a metal plate from above those when they're inserted, but
somebody can, you can't just steal somebody's hard drives.
Still, it's interesting that they'd have those accessible sort of from the outside and then not provide at least the option of mounting an array, internally with all that space.
Right. Right. I mean, and that's the thing with a case this large. If it included, 4, 6 extra hard drive trays and ways to mount them, or something of that nature, you could look at it and say, okay, it could be used that way as well. But this doesn't. This is obviously you're going to build a huge water cooling loop in, and that's pretty much it. You certainly wouldn't want to build an air cooled system in it, because if you put a big chunking air cooler on top of a motherboard in there, you're still going to have a huge amount of empty space. It's going to be Josh's hot dog in a hallway.
Yeah,
but it'll show it off really nice.
I guess
it'll show it off.
Yeah, but
this is probably
for just to make sure it's not my hot dog, okay?
No.
Noted.
Hey,
Noted.
Nobody said.
No, apparently it's a
anything
glass
about
hot
that,
dog.
Josh. I've never heard any complaints.
It's a token. It's not.
No one will
actually
ever see those photos we took, Josh. I promise.
Yeah. Yep. Those were never.
Alan's never complained. You're good.
Oh my god.
All right.
Oh.
Anyway.
Moving off that R rating
let's
now.
Move on. Picks of the week are next, and Josh, I am stunned by this pick.
This is shocking. Shocking. You don't have to do a shuffle. You don't have to go to eBay. You don't have
Is
to
it
pay
shell
over.
shocking? Is it a shell shocker?
It's not even a shell shock. It's just regular MSRP. You can finally get a 5600X for MSRP anytime you want.
Online.
Well, I mean, except if you lived in the Middle Ages, you wouldn't be able to get one.
Right. Not any actual time.
Right.
You know,
unlike a Star Trek episode.
Just whenever.
The guy
Very
that
little time travel.
Steven, he went into I can't remember his last name. He went into a restaurant and said, what is it? Breakfast anytime you want. He said, can I get pancakes in the Middle Ages? In the Renaissance? Stephen Wright.
Stephen
Yeah,
Wright.
it must be
great.
Stephen Wright.
Yeah.
It sounds like a Stephen Wright.
I want to get a tattoo of my entire body over myself, only taller.
If you're going at the speed of light and you turn your lights on, would they do anything?
I think your delivery's too fast.
It is.
But I was
trying
to get it in.
You sounded awake. But it's crucial.
Breakfast anytime. Can I get pancakes during the Renaissance?
Pancakes.
Yeah,
in the meta.
Anyway, it's time to buy a Ryzen 5000 series. A guy I just
two
worked
of
with, he does professional work. And 5 years ago, one of his clients bought a server with 8-core Xeon, 16 threads. And he was very, very proud of that for a very long time. And he was doing a work piece with it. And it took 4.5 hours to complete on his server that he was very proud of because, he paid a lot of money back in the day. And my friend had a 5600X with 32 gigs of memory, and it completed the same workload in 3 hours and 15 minutes. So, this kind of tells you where we're going in terms of performance, and it's a 65-watt part.
With 2 fewer cores than your Proud Boy system.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. Technology, progress.
Availability.
Get one.
It's all about availability. Forget about technology.
Availability's
Just-
great.
You can only
and you
get
can buy a
those two.
motherboard too. Oddly
You can
enough,
only get those 2 CPUs.
next-
you can't get
the
the
next
59 and the
person
5950.
Yeah.
something
Speaking of
that
that,
this will go
Jeremy,
into.
I think it's
The
Jeremy.
next pick
Yes.
is related. Now, bear in mind,
Yes.
this is the Canadian price. But right now, a very solid motherboard, the Gigabyte X570 Aorus Elite Wi-Fi, is cheaper than the non-Wi-Fi version. So why spend an extra $20 not to have Wi-Fi? And I mean, if you look behind me, that it's the box is sitting right there. It's one of the ones that I'm running my 5800X on. Josh is running the same thing. It is a damn solid board. It does just about everything you want. It doesn't have a lot of the extras you're never going to use.
I don't
but
have
it
the
does have
Wi-Fi
headers
version,
for
but
them.
otherwise,
Nor do I.
it is the same. Yeah, it's a great board. If you don't need Wi-Fi,
But right now, the Wi-Fi is cheaper than the non-Wi-Fi, which is why I recommend the Wi-Fi version.
well,
Well, it's good board.
What's the
And
Wi-Fi? Is it
now it's on
Intel
sale.
AX200?
It's the Intel 6
I don't know. I don't have the
thing,
board.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the fancy new one.
It is.
I'm reading.
It's the
Wi-Fi
pans,
6?
not the pots.
Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, there's about 12 letters after it
It
now.
says
I
Intel dual band 802.11 AC Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 4.2. I'm guessing it's the X200.
Yeah.
It's the X200 on AMD boards and the X201 on Intel boards, typically. Who is next? What's our next
That'd be
pick?
me.
Okay.
I've been picking a lot of networking things lately, and like I said, I was perusing Woot earlier today when I got the email, and I'm like, what do they have on here that's a good deal? Unfortunately, this only lasts one night only for the next hour or so. This DOCSIS 3.1 modem is probably the cheapest one I've seen at just under $100. Now, I have a Motorola here that probably cost me $180 when I bought it at DOCSIS 3.1, and it has served me very, very well. There's only a few makers of chipsets out there, but Netgear is one of my other trusted vendors for building networks out of, switches and such. It's a really good price for a DOCSIS 3.1 modem, which is a little bit more future-proof than your average 3.0. Although there's very few systems that are providing a feed that will outrun a DOCSIS 3.0 modem. But a 3.1 will get you many years into the future and serve you very, very well. And at $100
if you're on a cable internet connection, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if gigabit will do you. I mean, look, you're having a problem. Well, let's talk about talk about Sebastian's problem.
I have AT&T Fiber here because I lucked into it because I think they were installing it on my street for some other reason. So they went around and they put door tags on everybody's door. I don't even know if it was on both sides of the street. It might be. They're like, hey, this is available if you want it. And the price
you're a
is
both sider now. Great.
ridiculous. The price is ridiculous on this. I pay $40 a month for gigabit symmetrical.
I hate you.
You're stealing it. You're stealing it.
And that's with a $20 discount. After the first year, that discount goes away and it goes up to $60. So I pay $60 a month for symmetrical gigabit fiber. I'm okay with that. But it was down for 3
I'm
hours
59
today.
for 115.
I pay for
still well
gigabit
over
cable.
120,
What's your upload?
and it's not gigabit.
40
Yeah, it's sad.
40 meg.
Kent, I'll let you go next. What is your pick?
My pick has something to do with some of the issues I had with that case, but it's also...
I thought it was going to be
probably-
penicillin.
No, not that kind of issues.
That'll clear up, Kent. I mean, the swelling will go down
clear up.
soon.
Let's
I mean,
hope
it's
so.
the itching. It's the itching that gets to you.
Brett has extensive knowledge of this. Kent, please continue.
Were you in the Navy, Brett?
Well, he does like Apple, so I mean, that's how you know.
Oh, Lord.
You know what?
The fruity
You know what?
computer company.
I deserve this. That's all I
You
have to
do.
say.
Yes. All right, Kent, go.
So, one of the most useful gifts I've ever received was an iFixit kit. And iFixit makes a lot of tools, and that is what I have listed as my pick of the week, as the iFixit store, because they have a lot of tools to fix just about anything electronic you come across. And they are good tools. They stand behind them, but iFixit, one of the reasons I'm recommending them is because they are very strong in the fight for right to repair. Because if you can't try to fix it or fix it, then you don't really own it. And I think we all have a right to break our own things if we want to.
Damn right.
Yes.
Agreed. But something you wouldn't want to break, and I have not gone hands-on. I'm trying to convince myself not to buy this. Because I've started to get this obsession with open
Apple
source
products?
handhelds. I think is what the category is technically
that's-
called.
Wow. We're going to fill that pause with a lot of different things, by the way.
Yes, we could. But they're just open source handhelds. These things that run like RetroArch or something, and you can take them anywhere, and they look like a Game Boy, or they're landscape oriented, so they kind of have that I don't know, like a PSP. Not really a PSP. Almost some of them look like a Game Gear, like a smaller Game Gear. But anyway, this nice little website called Obscure Handhelds has a story about the new RG351V. That would be V for vertical. There's also a 351P portrait. Wait a minute, portrait is vertical. What am I saying? P for plastic. They have a weird naming scheme. This is Anbernic. They're a Chinese company that makes these handheld systems. I have an RG350M and an RG351P. The 351V, though, is basically the same as a 351P, but it is a more like a Game Boy style. So it's vertical. But what's cool about it, to me, isn't so much the fact that it's vertical, it's that they went with a 640 by 480 IPS display. The 351P, great interface, very, very accessible, very easy to use. My wife and son both use it without any issue. Navigating between games is very simple. You don't have to pick emulators and then pick games from a list. You just scroll and it's all right there on the screen. But anyway, it's hampered somewhat by a 3.2 aspect screen that has much lower resolution. It's like 320 by 240 or something. Or 480 by 320. Anyway, 640 by 480, much better for game systems that were designed to display on a TV, not handheld. So this will be much better for emulating like PlayStation, N64, Super Nintendo, all that kind of stuff, because you can do an integer scale and mostly fill up the screen.
Wait, are those hands to scale?
These hands in the picture make it look absolutely massive. I think it's just bad.
These are the 6-year-olds that assembled it.
Yep, and that's a giant piece of wood. That's a giant piece of wood in their hands.
They're going to invade Taiwan because of that comment. Stop it, Jeremy.
I'll just edit that out.
Yeah, you're going to have to. There's going to be a lot of editing, actually.
I think the problem is, to me, is just going to be price. When these first launched, they're always like $129, $139. We'll eventually see them for less. I bought my 351P for $98 on Amazon or something, so we'll see them come down. But I just want a higher resolution screen, because once I got used to the 351P, which was so much nicer of a user experience than the 350 series, where you literally go through something that looks like a very old Linux distro, and you have to go screen by screen, pick an emulator, then pick a game. This is just a better experience, so I'm excited about the screen. That's all.
Are you definitely getting the wooden grain?
I don't know. There's like the LGR edition.
Oh, really?
Wood grain. I don't know. I'd probably get the one that looks like a Game Boy, I guess. The sort of off grayish white one.
Off gray.
I don't know. Yeah. I'll just not get one at all. That's gonna be my goal.
I'm just surprised you had a pick.
Yeah.
So unlike you.
Shocking. Even.
Does anybody have anything else?
Yes, I just want to say that I actually doubted myself when I first wrote this at leading off with the 11th gen 11700K story. And I'm sorry I did.
You sorry you doubted yourself leading off with it?
Yeah, because I had that in the one position, the number one position, and then moved it down.
I mean, I could still move it up, but that would take a lot of work. I don't want to do that.
No, don't do it. No.
But on that note, tune in next week, as we will likely return for more of whatever this was. And maybe Josh's cat will make another cameo during the intro.